Hey folks, welcome back to another Mexico national team reaction video brought to you guys from us over at Goal Sighted. We're going to be talking about Mexico's performances at the Nations League tournament, the semifinal against Canada, and the championship match against Panama, which gave them the Nations League title. I'll give you guys my opinion. I'll give you guys my good and my bad. Which players do I think cooked? Which players do I think need to be subbed out or that we need to find better solutions for ahead of 2026? And stick around to the end of the episode. I'm going to be giving you guys my way too early predictions ahead of the 2026 World Cup, how I think Mexico will do based off of these previous performances, and looking into what I think can happen in the next year. And like always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you can follow along for all the content ahead of 2026. Let's get it. So let's go game by game. In the Canada match, we got almost like a 3-4-2-1. We got Piojo Alvarado and we got Gallardo out as wingers. We had Piojo Alvarado doing a lot of recovery work on Alphonso Davies' side. We had Charlie and Eric Lira. Big surprises in the middle. No Edson Alvarez because he ended up playing center back in place of Cesar Montes, who was out because of yellow card accumulation. We had Santi Jimenez in at the same time as Raul Jimenez, which I think was a huge surprise for a lot of folks to be able to have them both at the same time. Santi was playing a little bit more behind Raul Jimenez, almost in a dupla with Alexis Vega. So less than 60 seconds in, we get a locker room goal from Raul Jimenez. A couple of rebounds off of a Piojo Alvarado shot, and it falls right to Raul Jimenez, who calmly puts it away, putting Mexico in a really comfy driver's seat position for the rest of the match. I think a lot of us were expecting Canada to come back with a really strong response, but we honestly didn't see that at all. They looked pretty dead in the water. Kyle Larin looked pretty weak. Osorio I thought was pretty bad. I'm surprised Schaffelberg didn't play a lot more, but I think the biggest surprise was that Alphonso Davies was so quiet, having really good Champions League performances with Bayern. He had El Grande Piojo Alvarado take care of him, and he honestly did an amazing job. Piojo Alvarado had the least touches of any player playing 90 minutes. That's because he had to track back and help out Israel Reyes with the defensive work to take care of Alphonso Davies. But I think overall, between Reyes and Piojo Alvarado, they did a really good job at nullifying him. In the second half, like I mentioned, we were waiting for Canada to snap back, but they never did. Who did snap back was Raul Jimenez, completing a brace by shooting a complete worldy, amazing free kick from the side that's a little bit more favorable to a lefty, but hitting it with his right and making it impossible for Dane St. Clair, who just threw himself para la foto. And what a moment Raul Jimenez is living in. This dude could make it rain out there. He could score from one side, he could score from the other side, lefty, Rabona, whatever he wants to. We're honestly living in a Raul Jimenez world right now. So in that match, the big standouts, Raul Jimenez, Piojo Alvarado. I really liked Edson Alvarez in the back line. We'll maybe talk about it a little bit in a bit because he moves back to the center mid. Eric Lira, I think, had a really strong showing. Had a couple of plays where he ran straight back to cover some really good counterattacks from Canada, and he looked like he was doing it no problem, like he was just on a light jog. Huge for him. He's earning himself a spot for that 2026 World Cup. Against Panama, we did see some changes. FootMob listed it as a flat 4, but if you watch the game, Gallardo does go up a bunch, which makes it kind of similar to that 3-back line that we saw in the first match. But we get Cesar Montes back in that back line. Israel Reyes plays again. Chino Huerta comes in out wide for Alexis Vega, but kind of closes in when Gallardo goes up the pitch. And then in the middle, no more Charlie and Eric Lira. We get Edson Alvarez back in there, and then we get Luis Romo. We still have Santi and Raul Jimenez. This time Santi kind of tag teaming with Chino Huerta. But we get Piojo Alvarado stealing the spotlight again with an amazing cross a little over 5 minutes in from one side of the pitch. Gets it all the way to the second post. A bit of help from the keeper and from the defenders not communicating, not knowing how to come out for it. And Raul Jimenez, with all the experience in the world, knows exactly where to be on the pitch so that when they miss the ball, he can easily just put it away and puts Mexico up 1-0 again in the driver's seat with a great opportunity to just kind of control the game and take home a trophy. But what we see in the match is that it actually doesn't end up that way. Vasco Aguirre even came out and upset because Mexico really gave up the match to Panama. And until the second half started, It was really Panama's game, and Mexico was just kind of ball chasing a good amount of the time. And it culminated in the first half. In the 46th minute, we saw a big desmadre in the box where all of the Mexico defenders were trying to get a ball that kind of got stuck between Edson and Malagon. Johan Vasquez goes in to try to clear the ball, but gets a crash with the player, and he ends up getting penalized with the PK. A bit unfortunate there. Mexico should have been a lot stronger that half. Maybe they wouldn't have gone into the half with a 1-1 draw. It is what it is. El Coco Carrasquilla, the best player from Panama, hands down, balled out, played really solid, was a handful for Romo and for Edson Alvarez. He puts it away, puts it right down the middle against Malagon, which is pretty cheeky to do against Malagon, showing his talents, that he's well above the rest of the team, the Panama. The second half, El Vasco Aguirre makes some subs. Mexico looks pretty strong, but it's still really heavy on Piojo and on Israel Reyes' side. But the ball's just not going in, which we know is a big thing in Mexico, right? They struggle to produce on demand and get goals from open play when they need to. But then thankfully Mexico got a huge break in the 92nd minute. Jose Cordova from Norwich, left center back for Panama. I have no idea what he's doing here. This is one of the wildest handballs I've ever seen in my life. He looked like a wide receiver in the NFL. He looked like an outfielder in baseball. He looked like a volleyball player trying to save a ball, like he meant to use that hand, like he really wanted to use that hand to get the ball here when it was going out of bounds, when there was no danger, when he easily could have let it go. He seemed like he wanted to do La Mano de Dios de Maradona when he just did not need to. Pretty embarrassingly gives up the penalty for Mexico, which is a death sentence right now with the way that Raul Jimenez is playing, and he puts it away. Raul Jimenez with that famous stutter step, no chance for the Panamanian goalkeeper. And Cordova probably got a pretty big talking to in the locker room, and he might even get some laughs back at Norwich. That penalty gives Mexico their first Nations League win. Edson Alvarez gets his first trophy as captain de la Selección de México, a back-to-back win against Panama in a championship match that the U.S. isn't able to make it to. So let's get right into it. I kind of want to talk about it and like the good versus the bad. From the two matches kind of lumped together, Mexico is doing a really good job at figuring out ways to just win matches no matter what. One of the things that they haven't been doing recently is scoring early on and taking that commanding lead. In both of these matches, they get really early goals, and they're basically all because of Raul Jimenez. It's great that Mexico has a player that can just put the team on their back right now. We thought that would be Santi Jimenez, but it's not him, and Raul Jimenez is being a godsend right now. The other big takeaway that I would say out of this is the defending. I think it's probably primary, and I think that's directly from El Vasco, figuring out a way to first defend and then attack. I think that's something big that we saw with El Vasco at Mallorca with the back line of 5. Mexico is playing with that back line of 5 every so often here, and thankfully they're producing enough to win games. Another big thing to just highlight, Piojo Alvarado having an out-of-this-world window. I don't think anybody was expecting it. Very much can be labeled as unlikely hero. He gets basically 2 assists. He has so much involvement in a lot of the creative play in the rest of the matches. He tracks back defensively and nullifies the best player that Canada has. A huge gold star for Piojo Alvarado. We need that over at Chivas, so he's got to keep that thing going when he gets back to Verde Valle. I think El Vasco is going to have a tough time now that he has a couple of players per position. Eric Lira kind of coming out of nowhere. Piojo Alvarado turning it on now, and I honestly thought that he was probably in one of the worst moments in a good while. But now he's even benching the likes of Julian Quiñones, right? It's making that wing competition very difficult. Israel Reyes had really solid defensive matches. He went up the pitch. I don't think it's his forte by any means. He's not the shiftiest. He's not the lightest. But he did what he needed to. He was like 100% solid defensively. Try to do what he could offensively, and that's what El Vasco needed versus like a total offensive player like Huescas. I think we'll see a lot more Huescas at Copa Oro. I don't think I even have to mention it. Raul Jimenez, how good that he's doing right now. It brings a lot of us to a conversation that we didn't think we'd be having about how good Mexico actually kind of looks every once in a while. It makes it seem like I'm just like bandwagoning and now just over-exaggerating what I think Mexico can actually do. But when you have a player like that in a great moment, you can honestly build around them. That's what Mexico needs to do. They have to like harvest the moment that he's in. They have to nurture it. They have to feed it and help it grow with the players around him. And if you get 3 to 4 players that are in great moments at the right time next year, Mexico can be a pretty dangerous team. with the good, there has to be some bad. El Vasco said it, that against Panama, after the first goal, they completely played terrible. And I agree. It was an overall sloppy first half after that goal because Panama couldn't do anything with all the opportunities that Mexico left for them. But overall, Mexico didn't take control of the game. It was a perfect culmination that they ended up giving up a penalty to Panama, who was able to level it at that point, and then almost risked having to go into extra time to have to win the match. If not for a completely crazy, surprising, stupid handball play that saved the day. I think Panama basically game planned it pretty similar to the U.S., figure out a way to get as far into the game as possible with the tight score line, getting a goal however they could, and they did with that penalty. But against the U.S., they got a really late winner. They almost had that in the works here until that handball. I think a big silver lining with not having the most offensive production out of this squad is that they are ultimately trying out a new system with Santi and with Raul Jimenez together. I don't even think Santi is super used to it. I know he's creating a good amount with AC Milan, but being a second to Raul Jimenez, I think, is a bit of a switch up for him, especially when both of these two players have been so used to being the nines for their team and everything feeding into them. The good thing about that is that if El Vasco Aguirre is able to figure out the right combination of players to enable this system, he can really create something great for the World Cup by having the best players possible on the field. That he mentioned that over and over, that's the biggest thing that he lost sleep over, is how do I get the best players, being Santi and Raul Jimenez, on the field at the same time. Another thing just to call out, Mexico didn't get to play the U.S., which I think is still going to be something that's going to linger in the back of people's minds there. They didn't get to get over that hump of beating them in Nations League. They didn't get to officially defeat the new coach, Mauricio Pochettino. They did it by other ways, by beating a really strong Jesse Marsch-led Canada and by beating a strong Panama side. I think the question will always be there until we see them play each other in either Gold Cup or, I don't know, maybe at the World Cup or something, is who is actually stronger, like in a head-to-head battle, because we all know that that's different. The U.S. would have been a lot stronger, would have come out a lot more intense against the Mexico squad versus how they played against that Panama squad. I have no idea what that even was. That was a terrible performance. And even against Canada, they played terrible. I have all the faith in the world that Mexico would have smacked them super easy, like even easier than probably the Canada match. Mexico still obviously has holes that they need to fill within the team. The outside back position is something that really needs to be filled with a solid, dominant player that won't get beat for the position. We're still relying on Gallardo. The right center back position is still pretty open. I know we have Cesar Montes there. In all honesty, I really liked Edson Alvarez playing there. I don't love Edson Alvarez playing center defensive mid. I think he's getting exposed at West Ham for not being super great on the ball, not being great at getting the team out from tight positions, and definitely not at transitioning from defense to offense. And I thought Eric Lira did that job amazing. I liked having Edson in the back because I felt really secure, and you have the captain, basically two captains there with him and with Johan Vazquez when they're playing together. But it doesn't seem realistic because it seems like El Vasco likes Edson in the middle, likes Cesar Montes starting in the back. But in an ideal world, I would love Edson at right center back, just control the entire back line. I think that would make Mexico really solid ahead of the World Cup. It would solve a big hole, in my opinion. It leaves a really good position for multiple dynamic mids to play together and to really help Mexico produce a lot more offensive play. One big takeaway, just kind of trolling it all away here, is seems to be Mexico's worst generation. I think Mexico a while back bottomed out. I think they were in one of the worst moments that we've seen out of the selección in recent years and at least my lifetime. To go to say that it was one of the worst generations, I think it has some validity to it. But even that worst generation is at a moment right now that they are the top team in CONCACAF, which is kind of weird to say. I would even go to the lengths of saying that Mexico never actually left the top of CONCACAF, because if we're saying that the U.S. was at the top of CONCACAF, they did horrible at the Copa America last year. They did not do great this Nations League, completely face-planted with a new European superstar coach. I don't ever think the U.S. really ever took the throne in that way. Maybe Canada, because they had the most points in the last World Cup cycle, but even that, they both tried. They gave it their college try to kind of take the baton and say, this is mine now. But ultimately, nothing stuck. And Mexico getting a big trophy here, I think, really brings us back to the point of just saying it's still Mexico. And I think Gold Cup can change that, but the team with all the confidence in the world right now is Mexico, that no matter what team that they have, they could still win trophies. And as a Mexico fan, the way that I feel about this team is that we have a good, solid 3 to 4 pieces in that starting 11 that we can build around. And we have about a year or so left to really find the right pieces to fit around them. And I feel really confident about that. Just a couple other points on the squad. Julian Quiñones getting 10 minutes was a bit confusing for me. I understand Piojo Alvarado had a great game, but I thought Quiñones should have been the one to come in for Alvarado. I honestly thought Alvarado should probably come out before Huerta. I know Chino Huerta didn't have a great game, but he didn't play much against Canada at first. So Piojo Alvarado looked a bit tired. I figured Quiñones would probably go in there and be really explosive on both sides, but we didn't really get that combination, and Quiñones only got the 10 minutes that he got against Canada. I'm wondering if he got jet lagged or if El Vasco just didn't see him at the right fitness level, but there are some rumors that El Vasco just prefers the style of play of other players. It is a bit of a luxury to be able to have a player like Quiñones just sitting on the bench when has 20 plus goals, 7 plus assists in the Saudi Pro League. That's pretty baller. We didn't get to see Rodrigo Huescas, which is something that I'm disappointed about because I really like his play as an outside back. But when they're playing with 3 in the back, almost a 5-back line for the most part, it's a bit tough to get him in. And then I'm assuming they went with a bit bigger players against some of the strong physical players from Canada. And then that just bled into the Panama match because they had a good outing. But I'm hoping to see Huescas more in Gold Cup because I think he should be there at the World Cup. If Mexico is trying to have a really good dominant play, produce more offensively, you get a lot more out of him than you do out of somebody like Israel Reyes, who I think is a really good shutdown defender, but in this day and age needs to do both, defend and attack. And Huescas gives you more of that. All right, folks. So as promised, I told you guys I'm going to go into my predictions for this way early 2026 World Cup predictions from my side. I think I could see El Vasco continuing with this pretty defensive-centric back line, a back line of 5 that the 2 wingers can be very offensive. I just don't love that takes a little bit away from like a Quiñones that kind of sacrifices maybe even Chino Huerta in there depending on who they want to start. But it should lead to some great defensive performances, which in my opinion will get Mexico out of the group stages pretty easily. I think Mexico being the head of the group is going to give them a pretty favorable group overall. El Vasco's big homework is going to be, is he going to lock down this 2-striker system? It sounds like he is because he has his 2 best players there. He has big homework there to figure out how to make that work really well. So to some predictions, I can see this team making it to El Quinto Partido pretty easily. Let's not forget, this is a 48-team World Cup this time instead of 32. And 32 move on to the round of 32, the first playoff round. So that makes it a little bit easier for Mexico to get into El Quinto Partido because you play your 3 group stages. You get a 4th elimination match, but you might actually get some pretty weak teams in that knockout round. So if Mexico gets first, which they should in their group, they should get a pretty favorable 3rd place team in Mexico City, the first knockout round. Even the second knockout round is in Mexico City. So they have to win that first knockout round. They move on to the next knockout round. They would play a stronger opponent at that point, but I think Mexico still has to win at that point, and that's El Quinto Partido. The famous one, just getting there is going to be huge, but I think you have to reset expectations. If you're playing in Mexico City in a 5th game, you have to win that, get to a 6th game, and then we're playing on borrowed time at that point, honestly. They might get a really strong team, and I believe that match is going to be in Miami, so I don't have that high of expectations. As of right now, that's me trying to stay grounded because I think Mexico at that point may get eliminated. Unless we see something in the next year, some revelations, some really good change of pace players. They fill up that bench with some superstars. I don't think Mexico would get past that 6th game, which is basically like a Quinto Partido at this World Cup. But maybe that'll get rid of those ghosts del Quinto Partido for Mexico. So yeah, folks, that's what I got for my reactions to Mexico's performance at the Nations League. You guys let me know in the comments below what you guys think of their performance. Let me know what you guys think of my predictions at the 2026 World Cup. Give me yours. And jump into our Discord, jump into our socials, folks. Subscribe to us on here for more content so you can follow along as we get ready for the 2026 World Cup. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. We'll talk soon. Peace.